You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here again, and today we have another show lineup for you all, and we have a returning guest. We have Zolal Habibi. She was not just here not too long ago, but her interview was doing some numbers. So I appreciate her and her team coordinating another chat with us. We're going to talk about a heavy topic, but she is someone that I believe will definitely shine some light and help us understand not just what's going on, but who is impacting and what we can learn from this. So without further ado, I want to say to you, Zola, thank you for your time being back on. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, and again for having us. I think that in these current circumstances, there are a lot of people who are just, trying to navigate these waters and trying to figure out what is going on. And so we thought it would be important to be able to share that perspective and shed some light on what is going on, how we can move forward from this point and what needs to be done, and maybe try to, answer some of those questions that exist. So thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to also greet everyone who is tuning in and watching the podcast today.
And with that, the topic that we're going to explore is Iran at a turning point, why the Iranian people must decide their future. My first question for you is, there has been a strong message that Iran's future must be decided by Iranian people, not the regime, not the foreign powers. What does that actually look like, and what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, exactly. That is what we have always emphasized on, and I think we spoke about it last time that I was here too, that the true solution to the issue of Iran, we have said for decades, not just right now due to the current circumstances, but in general, the solution is neither war nor appeasement. It's supporting the Iranian people and their organized resistance to bring about change. The reason why we stand by that is, history shows that unfortunately democracies are not installed through foreign war, you can't really. The circumstances are very different from many of the other countries we have seen in the region. And we've also seen the results of foreign intervention in those countries too. So we have the experience of the last century in Iran that unfortunately all the dictators in the past century have been installed through foreign meddling in Iran. So we have that experience in Iran. But on the other hand, Iran is very different than other countries in the region when you speak about overthrowing a government or regime change. The reality is that even like 1979, it was the people of Iran who revolted and overthrew the Shah. But unfortunately, that power vacuum was, filled in with Khomeini, who was brought in by the Western governments at that time because of the Cold War era, and they weren't very sure about the progressive movements who had actually created the revolution, so they needed someone that they thought they could trust. And unfortunately, people of Iran have been paying for that, the price for that for 47 years now. But we saw that today is day 7 when we're recording of the war. Within the first few days, we saw how this war has expanded. Right now, from within, I think, the first few days, we saw Iran retaliate and targeting, countries in the region, countries who some of them were trying to stay at a distance from this war and were not looking to try to get involved in this war, but they've been targeted. We are seeing civilians or civilian infrastructures being targeted on both sides. And, the catastrophe of war and also the implications of a war are very vast, especially when you are dealing with the number one state sponsor of international terrorism and Iran, which has always played a destabilizing force in the region. Right now, Iran's missiles have reached even countries as far as Cyprus in this war, which is in European soil, so it's not even limited to the Middle East. And in the past few days, the regime has been making threats on that they plan on targeting Albania, because Albania is where the Iranian resistance is located, and the regime fears, their role and their actions. So that is also one of the things that we're seeing. And if that scenario does happen, and I hope it doesn't, but if it does happen, Albania is a member of NATO. So this changes, the whole circumstances in the ground and the game here. So that's why, we don't see war as a solution. Right now, unfortunately, there's very limited information coming out of Iran because internet has been disconnected in the past week in Iran. So it's very limited information that is actually getting out of the country. But from what we are seeing, just the points or the extent that even just Tehran is being, attacked and bombed, or the infrastructures, or some even historical sites that have been targeted in this war, and also the civilian casualties. I think everyone has probably heard about the school, the elementary school of young girls who were killed, 150. But that was just on day one, and this has increased. The civilian casualties have increased and are well over 1,000. So, and that's only on the Iranian side. There are others who have lost their lives, and especially because of Iran's retaliation. So the reality is that the people of Iran were already suffering due to the current circumstances, from the massacre that was carried out in January till the actual economic situation in Iran, which had led to the uprisings in Iran. And so now adding the devastation of a war to it, the situation is very critical and dire inside of Iran. But also the reality is that, as we had stated before, even if you look at the different scenarios, yes, Khamenei has been eliminated, but does that mean that the regime has fallen apart? No, because this regime, it's very different than maybe some other dictatorship. It's not a one-man system, even though there's a supreme leader who heads the whole system, but there's an apparatus intact. It's an entire system that has been built on the notion of velayat faqih. So the same way that when Khomeini died, he was replaced by Khamenei. Now that Khamenei has died, he is being replaced. And this is something that the regime has been actually speaking about internally for over a decade now, because Khamenei, in different times, there have been, concerns that he had cancer, he's going to die, old age, he's going to die, or the circumstances, international circumstances. Just even in June, after the 12-day war, this was an issue on the table of the regime. So they've been preparing for this scenario for a long time. And so the system is still intact. And today, actually, for instance, one of the heads of the Revolution Guards came on television and made threats against the people of Iran. Anyone who uses the current circumstances to come to the streets, or, in one way or another, show their opposition to the regime, they're going to be dealt with. And we are seeing, the brutalities of the regime on the other side of the coin of this war. And that is something that the regime strives on, because that is exactly the same strategy that Khomeini had during the 8-year Iran-Iraq war. This regime has always strived in times of chaos, because that's the whole, its whole being is based on that, to create such circumstances to be able to keep itself afloat. Because when there's a war, they have open hands in suppression. When there's a foreign enemy, they have that, and they're able to legitimize their brutalities. On the other hand, you also have to understand the regime is very good at playing the victim card here. That's what they're trying to do, like especially in the region, trying to garner sympathy from those who are rightly anti-war, but don't understand that their stance falls, it actually supports the regime to a great extent. So it's a very delicate balance here, to be opposed to the war, but not allowing the regime to use it to its benefit, your position, and also, being supporting a tough stance on Iran, but being opposed to the war and foreign intervention. So it's a very, very delicate balance, and that is where the Iranian people stand, actually. And that is something that it's really important to echo, because I think at the end of the day, even though the people of Iran want to see complete regime change, and that means this regime has to go in its entirety. It can't be just the leader or this section or that section, because it's a whole system. It's that constitution that they have. It's, the whole of it has to be removed. It's like cancer. You can't just remove one part of the cancer. It's going to spread again. So it's the same notion. So taking that into consideration, it's really important that the people of Iran are able to overthrow the regime in its entirety, and to be able to take their destiny into their own hands, because they are the only legitimate side to do that. The Iranian people don't want to have to owe something to another government, that they're going to keep this over our head, that, hey, we overthrew this regime, so now you owe us or whatnot. So that's why the people of Iran have said from day one in the Iranian resistance that we don't want war at the price of US tax dollars or any other governments getting involved. We don't want it at the price of troops on the ground. That's not something that we want. But unfortunately, till now, there has been a policy of appeasement toward the regime. And this is till even the day before the start of the war, there were still negotiations with the regime. The issue on the table was not, the crimes the regime was perpetrating on the ground. It was Iran's nuclear program and Iran's missile program. It wasn't the issue of the Iranian people. And so they were still being used as the bargaining chips. And there was still an issue that if the regime had agreed to the circumstances that Western governments were setting in regards to its nuclear program and its missile program, they would have been fine with the regime staying in power. So at the end of the day, their issue is not the freedom of the Iranian people or the human rights violations in Iran. It's the interest of foreign interests there. And so that is something that we recognize as the people of Iran. And we think it's really important for people to also realize that, unfortunately, we have paid a grave price for the policy of appeasement. But now that the world has reached a point that, unfortunately, with appeasement, they weren't able to push anything forward anymore, and that it has turned into a war. Right now, it's very important to realize that there's still a way out. I mean, a prolonged war is not going to be to the benefit of anyone. I mean, the destruction, the costs, all of it, both the casualties and the costs. I mean, both are important to take into consideration. A prolonged war is not to the benefit of anyone. What is also key is the people of Iran can't actually come to the streets and fight back with the regime when they have to take, they need to be protecting themselves because there's, bombs, over their heads. So it's not a position, because I have spoken to some journalists or whatnot who were saying, well, where are the people of Iran now today if they, want the overthrow of the regime, and you say that they can do it themselves? I was like, well, the circumstances don't allow people to actually come to the streets right now under these, bombardments and whatnot. And the regime is using that to create, martial law and telling people to stay in their homes for their own safety and security and whatnot. So it does make it difficult. But on the other hand, I think it's really important to note that the direction that the people of Iran were going in, if we look from the last time that we spoke till now, there have been actually a few major developments on the ground by the people of Iran. Like, for instance, on what day was it? It was on Saturday, February 22nd, after over 1 month that all universities in Iran had been shut. They weren't completely shut down. All classes were supposed to be held online, and the campuses were shut down, and the in-person classes were shut down. After over 40 days of that, they were reopened. The day that they were reopened, protests began again, because people were able to come and gather somewhere to be able to start protesting. And that continued for 5 days, and the regime realized that, they're losing complete control over it. They're not able to control it, because it was not in just even Tehran or a few universities, it was spreading throughout the country. So they again said, all classes are going to be held online from the week after, which was the week that the war started. So all classes have been canceled completely. But so we were seeing that people are using every opportunity to come to the streets, because there was a full martial law in place after the internet blackout in Iran, and after the massacre that took place. And people also used the ceremonies that they were holding in memorial of those who were killed. In Persian culture, we have a thing that the 40th day of passing, people usually hold a ceremony. And these ceremonies turned to protesting against the regime. They turned into defiance of the families. Families held celebrations to honor their children who had been killed, and also to make a pledge to them that we're going to continue till the fall of this regime. And that is something that the regime feared greatly, because the whole point of the massacre was to spread so much fear in society that people would, be too afraid to come again or gather again or speak out again. But it backfired, because people were like, no, that was like the hay that broke the camel's back. They're like, there's no turning back. We have to continue, because otherwise this cycle is going to be repeated again. Like in a year or two, the uprisings are going to start again. We're going to come to the streets again. The regime will, open fire. And then again, for 2 years, or for a year, people are going to go back into their houses. And we can't allow that to happen. So we had that too. And the other thing that the most important, I think, was the activities of the resistance units that started taking new form to themselves. On 5 days before the start of the war, it was a Monday, the exact date would be Monday, the 23rd of February. What was it was startling for us, and I think it was astonishing. 250 members of resistance units in Tehran carried out a organized operation against the headquarters of Khamenei, which is the most secure location in all of Iran. And it was at the time that the day before talks had, started emerging that Israel is going to attack. So the regime was on high alert. And despite that, they were still able to carry out, such a large-scale operation on the ground And that really shook the regime to its core. And they tried to censor any news of it coming out because they knew that once people in Iran find out that such a thing had happened, it's going to revive the whole movement to, become more active against the regime. But some of their regime officials had started questioning it, and they said, one of them said in one of the state-run media, they had said, how is it even possible that 250 people organize a armed operation against the most secure location in all of Iran without being detected, despite all the technology that we have, and that they're able to even come this far. The price was very high because about 100 of them were either killed or arrested, but still at that given time and circumstances, that, was a major turning point for Iranians to have that. And so this was just 5 days before the war. And, there's still some footage on social media that you see, like, the regime brought in tanks and things like that. And people are like, why are we seeing tanks in the middle of the street in the middle of the day? What is going on? So people weren't really sure what was happening because that area is just like closed off to the public. But these people were able to actually go in, infiltrate and be able to go in and carry out this operation. Unfortunately, we don't have like the exact details because of both OPSEC and also the circumstances that there were there. But that was like a major turning point. And I think that if the war hadn't happened, it was clear that this was the start of a new path. And I think we would have seen more of it in days to come. And I think right now, even once this war ends, we will be seeing the continuation. So what's really important is to understand that if this war stops, it doesn't mean that this regime is still intact. It means it gives now the possibility for the people of Iran to start fighting this regime. But till now, we have to recognize that till last week, the world still didn't recognize the right of the Iranian people to resist in face of this regime. But the Iranian people are saying, hey, allow us to resist, allow us to fight back the IRGC, because this regime is not going to fall through just peaceful protests. We have to take up, armed struggle in face of this regime, but allow us to do that, our people to do that. And then you will see that change instead of a, full war that we are seeing, which is going to have repercussions far beyond Iran. And really, it could be a major danger stepping towards, World War III. So it is very important, I think, for the international community to realize that and to take that into consideration and to understand it. Another very important thing that has come about is that on Saturday, Mrs. Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, announced the provisional government for the transfer of sovereignty to the people of Iran under the 10-point plan presented by the NCRI. And that is a very positive step because it is a unifying force for people, for Iranians, and also it gives the international community some direction on like where things need to go and what is the solution. She had also given a message that even though it was in the first hours of the war, and since then she has given numerous messages, but I think that it put a lot of things into perspective on like where Iranians stand in the mix of everything. So if we have, sorry, I've been talking like one-sidedly the entire time, but if we have like 2-3 minutes, I could read it. And I think that might be informative for the viewers.
No, yeah, you definitely do that because, like I said, you're the one that's kind of giving us the news. So the floor is yours if you want to continue and give those details.
Okay. I will read that message from her own website. It's available. People can go and read it themselves too. But it says, "Dear compatriots, our homeland continues to endure greater pain and destruction under the rule of religious fascism. In these difficult circumstances, I call on all of you, especially the courageous youth of our country, to care for civilians and the general public, particularly children and the elderly. Protect them and help one another. Now is the time for solidarity. Our strength lies in the unity and cohesion of our people against the religious dictatorship and the remnants of monarchical fascism that seek to steal the democratic revolution. At this critical moment, I call upon our compatriots and all forces of Iran's democratic revolution to remain vigilant and prepared. In the war that has erupted today over the clerical regime's nuclear and missile programs that the Iranian resistance exposed 3 decades ago, all parties involved must exercise the utmost care to prevent any harm to the Iranian people and to the country's civilian infrastructure. I call on the public at large, especially supporters of the resistance, the youth and resistance units, the members of the Liberation Army, and all awakened women and young people to rush to the aid of those affected. I reiterate that the ultimate solution is the overthrow of this regime and the determination of Iran's destiny by the Iranian people and the organized resistance, by the brave sons and daughters of the nation in the resistance units and the ranks of the Liberation Army. Our path leads toward the future and the establishment of a democratic republic, not a return to the buried dictatorship of the past. Based on the 10-point plan announced for the transfer of sovereignty to the people of Iran, the National Council of Resistance of Iran announced the provisional government. The precedent of such a provisional government dates back to October 1981. I call on patriotic personnel in the armed forces to stand with the Iranian people. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and other forces tasked with preserving the regime must lay down their arms and surrender to the people. I declare to the international community that only the people of Iran possess the legitimacy to determine the political future of their country. Iran is not its regime. Iran is its people. No future for Iran can be realized from the outside. It can only be built by the Iranian people themselves. I call on all to support the Iranian people. As the Iranian people demonstrated during the January uprising, they seek a future based on a democratic republic and reject both the Shah and the mullahs. Our homeland has passed through many turbulent periods. It will pass through this moment as well. But within the people's front, we must choose unity, solidarity, and hope, and be prepared to pay whatever price it requires. Long live the people of Iran and victory to Iran's democratic revolution. So that was the message.
It's good to listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Zolal Habibi, and we are talking about the topic of Iran at a turning point. Why the Iranian people must decide the future. I want to ask you one more question before we take off, and that is, if you had a message for the world is watching, that's pretty clear. What will your message be to those who are outside and they don't really know what's going on? They kind of know what is being shown to them on the news and headlines and what they might be reading. But what will your message be to them?
My message is, first of all, in these circumstances, it's very important to be vigilant and, fact check everything that you hear and try to stay knowledgeable of the situation. And so raising awareness is key, but also please try to reiterate this message that the solution at the end of the day is not a foreign war. Right now, our issue is not even, differences that exist internally in, like US policy or whatnot in regards to the war. It really, if we concentrate on what is the solution can't be a foreign war. So allow the people of Iran to take their destiny into their own hands. So putting an end to both the policy of appeasement and war, so the people of Iran can take control of their destiny and to be able to create that true secular democratic republic that they yearn for. And hopefully that can set a precedent, not only for Iran, but also for other countries in the region. And this could be a start of a path towards freedom and democracy and peace in the region.
And looking ahead, what do you believe will be the most important developments people can also pay attention to in the coming months?
I think recognition of this provisional government that has been announced by the National Council of Resistance of Iran for the transfer of sovereignty to the people of Iran, and getting that recognized by different governments. Just as of yesterday, within a very short period of time, I think within 48 hours, over 470 lawmakers around the world had voiced their support for this provisional government. But this is something that will be taking off in the next few weeks, I think, or next few days. And I think that this is something that we can also raise with lawmakers in the US. So contacting your members of Congress, sharing this message with them, and asking them to stand by the people of Iran in these very critical times, because it has in it both the interest of the Iranian people, but also the US and the international community, because I think everyone will win under these circumstances, and that is the only way we could see the end of this regime.
Again, been talking to our guest today, Zolal Habibi. Like always, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to be with you.